It's a bummer. Hey, Kalen here, and we're live again on the Commerce Hero stream. The first one just broke down in a flame of glory. Sorry about that, Ben. It looks like we're back in business here. If it looks like I'm sweating, that's because I'm sweating. I don't know what the problem was with that. Google Hangouts is amazing, and it's amazing that such a powerful technology is free, but sometimes it just dies on you.
We still have all the rights to complain, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Speaking of rights to complain, Ben, I'm glad you brought us into that topic.
Now, wait, I want to state something very clearly. From my end, this outage looked like you had frozen. I was still going, so I was using my best material. I was talking about Magento 4. I was talking about how PWA was the next GeoCities. It was really, I don't know that it could have gone any better. And I feel terrible that this material was wasted. I feel guilty for rehashing it here.
I saw that powerful content and I said, no, this is too much for the people.
But by all means, please complain away.
This is too much for the people to see. I had to shut it down. I had to control the message. It was too much. I got to get my thing back up here so I can see any questions that are pouring in. No, what I was going to say is that it can be easy for people to complain about really any sufficiently large corporate entity. And sometimes people, complain about Magento. You've been on both sides of the coin, obviously. What's your perspective on that overall? Should people do more, stop complaining? Is the complaining good? You've probably gotten more than enough complaints for a few lifetimes by now. But what's your take on that?
Well, okay. Actually, I think an interesting thread came up, and it was an omni-channel experience at Imagine when Mark Lavelle, our CEO, said on stage that he kind of called out Karen Baker from Shipper HQ for sort of being an editorial voice, or Jiminy Cricket, however you want to call it, for us. And he did it in a kind of a jesting way, and I think actually some people kind of took it out of context and started to take it in a direction on Twitter. And Karen actually jumped in and said, no, it was accepted in the spirit in which it was offered. And that's just an easy and recognizable example of how much we rely on our community to help us. I wouldn't necessarily say set the course, but certainly to inform it. And we do ask the community question, right? I'll say that there's this generic thing. It's not a bullet point in every slide, but there are regularly any decision that we're making, there is that hey, how does this look to the community? Trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the community and see how they would respond. Because what we want to do is anticipate those complaints, so that everyone can kind of keep heads down on their work. But every once in a while, people we have a pretty broad vocal community, and they do a pretty darn good job of letting us know when we're not acting in their interest, or even when we are. We actually will accept compliments as well as complaints.
Right.
So for me, it's Magento is certainly better at this. Has gotten better, at least it seems to me, over the last few years. And I'm not just saying that because I've been an employee now for the last few years, 4 years now. But as a company, I've seen our how we do business and how we talk about the value and the impact of the community. That's definitely changed. It's changed certainly from the eBay days, when I wasn't quite on the inside, but I spent this first few years when I was teaching for Magento U, certainly being out in LA quite a bit and hearing some of these conversations and being brought in on occasion. So for me, it's a continually evolving story, but one that I think continues to evolve better and better.
Yeah. Comment from Max Bronco. He said, "What happened with the live stream? We had some issues. We had to restart it." He said, "Your speech and voice is so politically correct." I I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I think that you really hold a great line between obviously the position that you're in, representing the needs of Magento and also the voice of the community. I think you really hold that line well. It's got to be a hard line to hold.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because you have in a job like mine, I could there. Trust me, there's a heavy editorial circuit because I'm crazy up here. It's just crazy in here, and but this crazy also really likes his job and really likes getting to do the things that he does. And I can't do that if I'm going just absolutely bonkers on Twitter. If somebody says something I don't like, yeah, I mean, it's in my nature anyway to try and resolve things. I think I'm part golden retriever. I just want everyone to be happy. But I do have a responsibility to represent the company well, because when someone in my position, I mean, we're all aware of the notorious flameouts out there. I think the best I ever saw was the guy from Twitter who was like VP of communications and didn't know how to use Twitter and was bad mouthing his boss like the day after he got hired as he was getting drunker and drunker. And then like you could literally see him sober up over a few hours and then basically fire himself.
I'm not sure I remember seeing that.
It's really worth looking up, because the guy that was running Twitter at the time was like, yeah, we're not even, or Twitter, I was running PayPal at the time. It's like, yeah, no. Most of the time, these people just get to resign. No, I'm firing him. This was terrible. So I have to, if I care about my job, which I do, I have to make sure that I'm not, I'm not speaking ill of people, that I'm also speaking in a way that encourages people to reach out to me. I'm always floored. Like every week, someone reaches out to me with a problem that they could have gone to someone else with, and I hope that that's due to the honesty and openness of my presentation. Now, granted, there's a kind of a bit of a heuristic there, because if I don't seem open to someone, they may not contact me. But I think I still enjoy a pretty good reputation as someone who's not going to bullshit, and that's exactly the kind of presence that an open source company has to have with its community, because the community, as we've mentioned, keeps us honest.
Absolutely. I have like 16 follow-up questions on that, but Great. I wanted to try to loop people in, because everybody wants to interact with you, of course. Guido asks, how was Vietnam?
Vietnam was always lovely. Guido and I were, let's see, Guido and I were there at the very first Meet Magento Vietnam. It was a shocking experience. I think my first time there. I think Guido's as well. And we were shocked to see so many. I mean, there's so many things that weren't expected. We didn't expect to see this almost 500-person event. Didn't expect to see a government minister. Didn't expect Vietnam to be, as you drive out of the airport and you literally pass under hammer and sickle, like masonry. And then you get there.
Do they still have that stuff, hammer and sickle?
So yeah, it's still there. Like it's there, but the country is so young. They love business with the West, particularly with the U.S. It's so absolutely warm and friendly. But the government minister that was there, I mean, it was his job to get basically every business in Vietnam online. I mean, it just doesn't fit with what the kind of the narrative that the people from our generation got about growing up about Vietnam. So so Vietnam this time was lovely. We're looking forward to Smart OSC are some great partners for us. Looking forward to some good events coming out of Southeast Asia, especially with Smart OSC's involvement.
Nice. We also got Vinay in the room. He says, "Hey, everybody! Looks like you're at home, Ben."
Yeah.
And a question to Ben from Max: how to be invited into the Magento U exams preparation? What needs to be done in this field? For example, videos, tutorials, blog posts, etc.
There's not really a set course. We have been in the early days. I kind of actually got involved in the informing. Well, I got involved in the process of this certification creation a little bit down the road after, as the professional certification was getting underway. So really, you could just need to register intent. You can send a message to certification@magento.com. You can always send me a note, and I will pass your interest along to the team. It's a fairly grassroots thing. I mean, we rely on people who know what they're talking about. So especially under Sherry's watchful eye, are really trying to make sure that this isn't just a purely like North American white guy panel, right? Because there's a lot of things. The certification has to be broadly applicable, and there's like this whole world of people out there who come from different cultures and have different genders and different language abilities, right? So we're trying to expand this team and make sure. I mean, we've got the Ukrainians and the English as a first language group pretty well represented. This last front end certification group, we were able to bring in a couple of the preeminent women from the Magento development world. We've Anya from Snowdog. We actually had Olga from our team, our professional services team. And I know we also brought in Rodrigo Moral from WebJump in Brazil. And I tell you, it is very, very helpful when you're trying to craft these questions to make sure that there are people there to represent the folks who don't speak English as a first language, because there are just some words that end up being very ambiguous, right? And so it's a great chance for us to really make this certification applicable to
generally
the broader
applicable
audience.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. We were making this joke last week on the stream about how you could target a very niche demographic with Irish, Ukrainian, bow tie wearing individuals. So if you need to beef up that demographic. Well, so I have a question. I was listening to actually a Tim Ferriss podcast this morning with a female entrepreneur, and she's talking about initiatives she's making around in investing in and encouraging female entrepreneurs, that kind of thing. And you mentioned getting more women in the certification groups, and I'm curious how I've heard things around how having women involved at the leadership, at the executive level, can change the dynamics where maybe things are more collaborative or things like that. Some of the strengths that women tend to have over men, or just balancing things out. Was there any way in which you saw the dynamics of that certification team change with more women involved?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful to have a fairly strong lady in my life. So I'll make this about me. She has done a very good job of noticing. She's actually keeps me honest when I'm out and about at events, to make sure that I'm not taking over conversations, which is not in my nature, but it's just I get very excited.
You have the gift of gab,
and I talk about relevant things, right? And it's like, hey, and so I get excited. And she has taught me the kind of this art form of, before you open your mouth, take a breath, and maybe let those people for whom they're not going to quite jump in right at the tiniest little break. Let the conversation happen a little bit outside of you. Just always basically be active in that. And I kind of encouraged a couple of folks. You get a group of Magento experts in the room, and obviously you got a lot of people with strong opinions. And it was really interesting to make sure that the people who just speak a little more softly naturally. It's actually, in a small group dynamic, it's very easy for them to be overridden because they're just not being heard. So I know I was trying to make sure that space was being given, and from what I saw, other people kind of took that as well, and we're actively looking around and making sure, hey, we're kind of railroading over here. Let's let this person's voice be heard, and so much value. I cannot stress, so much more value is delivered. And I think, I'm not going to say it's like this magic ingredient between a ratio between male and female personalities, if we'll pretend that's a thing. I think it's more that it's just easy when you are with a group of people and you sort of collectively imagine that you're like-minded. It's very easy to just gloss over things and to think that you're all in agreement and not actually dig into those corners. So when you start really broadening perspectives and actively broadening perspectives, you're a little more sensitive to paying attention to those rough edges or those corners, and that's where I think the value is in that process. I mean, I know it's been very helpful having Andrea Ward. I mean, we've had Francesca as far as our executive leadership goes, but Andrea's come in, and I know. And this is a topic that's near and dear to her heart as well. And I do like that the Magento community does try and look after this. Now we see this at our events where we really strive. We work very, very hard to make sure that there's a fairly diverse representation on the speaker panel. I mean, for us, it's very important because, well, it's great to have these different perspectives. We also think it's kind of a self-investment. It'll, when people see people they identify with on stage speaking, hopefully it encourages them to do that. But we have a long way to go in the Magento community. I mean, I know right now, Meet Magento Germany, and that's the team that runs that is actually it's a female team, but I think maybe we have something like 2 out of 40 speakers or 41 speakers are female. And so we as a community have a long way to go. I'm actually hoping that the Magento Association can help with this in some degree.
Right. Totally. So the certification process as a whole, I have to say I've heard from a lot of people that the M2 professional cert is very hard. So I think you guys did a good job on that. How did it go overall getting that front end certification done?
Man. I was as a test writer, I was absolutely useless. I think I have one question that got in, and but it makes sense. Like I am no longer the Ben Marks who can both write these certifications and then pass them. I'm not doing the day-to-day work. Magento is a more technically involved stack. There you go, Max. There's some more politically correct language for you. So. I'm just, because I'm not doing the work day to day, it's harder for me to just kind of know this stuff. And I like that we're writing scenario based questions that really they feel, from the feedback that I hear is that they just feel more applicable to what a developer is doing. And I think we hit that mark again with the front end certification. And it's really cool to actually watch some of these questions come around where someone proposes a question and it's like, it's not a great question, but there's some really good meat in there. And then, you do a couple of rounds with the group, and then all of a sudden you end up with this really great distillation. And we'll know for sure once that exam is out there and we start getting the feedback. That's kind of the newest area for Magento, right? Because we're covering some of these, just newer concepts that exist in Magento. And the next up will be a JavaScript focused certification that'll be built in July.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fun. Actually, I remember hearing about that now. It's interesting because I've had somebody recently that's like, hey, we need to hire somebody that's really strong with like M2 Knockout JS. And I've been putting my feelers out, and it's this funny thing where front end can mean lots of different things now. Like, there's great front enders that are mostly theming, but they're not that deep into JavaScript. It's almost, you might have, a hardcore backend developer might have more luck really diving into like some types of JavaScript. So that's interesting because that there's definitely a need for that.
I mean, one of the things that I've been telling, it was a realization that slowly dawned on me. I'm sure it's occurred to many people out there, but for those that haven't had this kind of pop up in their brain yet, you're really no longer in the PHP world. You're really no longer just a PHP developer. right? I was always just I was PHP. I didn't come at this from a CS degree. I didn't really get any exposure to Java or C or anything. So these days, though, you are both a JavaScript and PHP developer, and I mean you can see that reflected when you go out to the PHP conferences. That there's essentially these JavaScript frameworks are popping up because they're just it's part of the tool set, right?
Yeah. You can see it reflected in like Laracasts, where like half of the stuff on Laracasts is like Vue.js stuff.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's it because it's a really smart way to get to manage the interface and to get your work done quickly. Yeah, Laracast really is the shining. Jeffrey Way. Laracast is such a shining example of how especially framework specific education can be done. It's something that I'm not the only person in Magento that looks up to it. That's for sure.
Yeah, actually, great timing here because Vinay just mentioned Ben corrected a ton of questions and helped with language so much it was invaluable and sped up the process a lot. So it sounds like you're not giving yourself enough credit, which is not at all a surprise to me. But also Vinay is working on Mage2.tv.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I'm also pumped about that. Very similar parallels, obviously, to Laracast. I hope it's as much more successful than Laracast. And we're going to be doing a live stream with him on Thursday to talk about that. And he recently tweeted out some of the new content he's getting ready to launch, which is there's a lot there.
Yeah, the great thing I appreciate Vinay calling that out. And yes, I mean I do feel like I add value at these certification workshops, so I'm always happy to participate. And we have but now that said, we have a great team leading it, especially Peter Menjak from who we got from had come off of doing pretty much all of Drupal certifications. If for all of you at home who read certification magazines on the regular, he's writing a lot of those articles. Literally, I mean the guy is pretty well known. He's got a long career in this, and his process is it's so damn refreshing. The way we had a very different approach for the Magento 1 certifications, and it was a bit tedious. I mean, it was thorough, but it was tedious. It just took a very long time, and I love
the process of creating the test.
Yeah, we might spend a couple weeks coming up with items, and then literally months of like review and tweaking and dial knob turning, and at the end of the day, we have to move quickly, right? Because hell, I mean, Magento is moving pretty quickly. And once we get the front end certification out, we're not too far away from the future where we're probably going to have to start doing some PWA specific certification, and it's a good thing that we can move so quickly now. And I love that Magento has really, as a company, I've watched us really bring in some key people and some fantastic. Just throw some fantastic amount of resources behind getting certification and education out there. So you'll see actually a lot of education initiatives from us. I know we mentioned we're going to start trying to incorporate essentially a video learning library of community source content. So the kind of stuff that like Max Pronk has been doing with Dev Channel, which you should subscribe to if you don't.
Subscribe now. Mash that subscribe button.
Yes, you want to be the bow tie. And then with Vinay's stuff with Mage2 TV, I want to encourage everyone to get involved with education. The study guides that we put out, that we publish for the certifications, list of topics, list of questions. Vinay's been writing a lot of that along with Vitaly from our education team. My goal for those, I want someone to just take those, put them in Markdown. I'd actually write them in Markdown. So put them in Markdown, throw them on GitHub, and then everyone start building out study guides. It's the best way.
Nice. And so you mentioned, by the way, David Manners is in here, and he asked what your favorite, what your dream drum kit is, and tagging onto that question, you mentioned that the process with the new guy, Peter, is different from the previous process, which was kind of tedious. So what is the new process like? Do you just all get together in a room for a few days and just finish it? Or how is the new process better?
The new process, so it's literally we get together and within 4 days, we have all of the questions written. We have all the questions written. written and reviewed, entered into the testing system, and it's done. And then even Peter does, we'll get some data after the fact, and there's some other details. I don't think I'd be betraying secrets to talk about it, but I'll let Peter tell the story since it's his process. But the big thing is we get in a room together, we get it done in like 4 days.
It's more collaborative, I'd imagine, than doing it asynchronously for months and months and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the crazy thing is, even with the months and months process, the bulk of the questions were written within like a week or two, but it was just then tweaking the specific language just down to every little phrase and trying. We ended up with very, very sterile questions, stems, and distractors and answers, and that's why, as one of the bits of feedback I heard about the Magento 1 certification was that it was overly terse. It was so the language was so sterile, it was kind of hard to put into context, and it ended up actually being difficult, somewhat difficult for people who spoke English as a second language. I noticed, particularly among people who actually, no, I wouldn't even say particularly among like Slavic or other language backgrounds. It was difficult. If you didn't grow up speaking like American English, it was a difficult test to take.
Totally. So Dream Drum Kit?
Dream Drum Kit, I actually it's amazing, since I've stepped away from being a professional drummer on the regular. There's Yamaha. There's Roland. Roland came out with these V drums a long time ago, but if anyone's looking for a mere $8,000, there is the Roland TD 50KV, and these things are they're if you're a drummer, if you're interested at all, like look at a video of a professional playing these things. It's amazing how great they sound. But if I had those, I could actually play when I'm home, which is
now. Is this one of those things like with lobbying where like you can't accept cash gifts, say from agencies or partners, but if someone were to just buy a $8,000 drum kit for you, there's a loophole in there where you could accept it?
Oh no, I accept cash all the time. How do you think Mr. Luma got the theme named for his wife? No, I do my best to not to not take bribes. I mean, I think probably if someone is bribing me, we can be pretty sure that they don't get it, right? Because if something's important, I will actually take it to my peers for free. That's kind of what I do. I will accept a nice coffee or a tea sometime.
Nice. Question from Guido. Here in the Netherlands and also when traveling to Magento events abroad, it seems like the main restriction on growth for Magento agencies is the limited availability and access to good Magento developers. Is it really supply that's limited, or can and should agencies be more creative in training, finding, or outsourcing? And obviously you have an interesting perspective on this, having come from Blue Acorn and having really specialized in training yourself. Obviously Blue Acorn had a really strong and has a really strong training expertise in-house as an agency. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I think there's a heuristic in operation, right? I'm only going to encounter really the successful agencies, right? They're the ones that are the likeliest to show up, or their developers, the ones that are likeliest to show up at events. But the story that I hear, and this just goes across the Magento world, and I even hear it a bit just in people hiring juniors in other kind of frameworks or areas. But you're going to spend for a junior, you're going to spend probably 2 to 3 months getting him or her trained up. And very often that means like they're not doing billable work at all. So it's an incredible investment. And in different markets, that can be quite a lot of risk, right? Because you train them up and then they're just going to jump over to some other agency that's going to pay them 10% more. But I think I've seen that even in cultures where that is just more common. I have seen businesses kind of figure out figure out how to sell, how to be the kind of culture that developer wants to be in, and you can hold on to talent that way. But in general, right? It's just when I was at Blue Acorn, we needed bodies in chairs, so we hired people who had good minds, fresh out of college, and I remediated them on, because they didn't computer science programs, at least around here, just totally suck when it comes to PHP and web dev in general. And so I'd teach them HTTP, and I would teach them MVC, and then we'd kind of move into Magento. And then once they got comfortable with the framework, we'd get them into e-commerce concepts. And that kind of pattern, I've heard variations on that theme from other, from my peers in the industry. So you have to put the time in. There is no such thing as an off-the-market Magento developer. I mean, they're too high demand. They're either working for somebody or they're starting their own business.
Right.
That's
right.
the way it is. I'm actually, wait, who am I talking to? You know this. You know this straight up.
I dabble in these areas, but yeah, I actually had an interesting conversation with Alan McGregor last week on a stream, and he was, he's moved from DMAC to merchant called Browse recently, and he was talking about, he was at DMAC. Yeah. It's kind of a marketplace for selling from Asia into US markets and stuff like that. And he's the CTO over there. But yeah, he was talking about their process around kind of hiring out of boot camps and just what to look for, kind of core personality traits.
Yeah, that's being in Charleston, South Carolina here, we have this kind of thing came up because a lot of people, entrepreneurs, figured out they could attract people here because the quality of life here is really good. And so naturally, just these tech companies kind of aggregated here, and they came up with this moniker that it's the Silicon Harbor. And this is a lot of good. There's some DoD firms that do all that electronical stuff as well. But what sprung up actually were these Iron Yard style boot camps, where you could take classes over the course of 6 months to a year, and you've got this progression of like basic web dev and then learning MySQL and other things. And we actually, Blue Acorn, we started having people go over and teach in these classes, and got more than one. We had some interns come out of it, and then more than one employee came over. So I think if you can get involved in any kind of mentorship, if nothing else, if you get no employees out of it, guess what? Your employees get stronger. There's absolutely nothing better to reinforce what you know and what you don't know than teaching.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Kind of, you're hitting two birds with one stone. If you can't teach something, you really don't know it, and with any luck, you get some nice hires out of it. Got a question from Vinay here. Ben, when are you getting a new puppy?
Oh man, it's the sort of the furry biological clock has been ticking since we had a golden retriever for 12 years, and she passed away. She had a good duration for a golden, and passed away a couple years ago. And it's actually been good because it's really opened up the door for my wife Tracy to travel with me, which in turn allows me to be in more places throughout the year than I would otherwise. And yeah, but I tell you, like pretty much every day that I'm out on the road, Tracy like wakes up to a GIF, usually of like a golden retriever, specifically of a golden retriever puppy. It's gonna happen soon. I know. I don't know if it'll be this year, but it'll be soon.
Nice. So you, I mean, as far as your role as the evangelist, you travel like crazy, you speak at events, like you said, you sort of handle inbound, issues, resolving things, certifications. What does, this evangelist role is sort of a newer role you're seeing that's cropped up in recent years. And like, how would you describe, what exactly do you do around here? I guess is one thing. What would you say that you do around here? Like, how do you see your core roles and responsibilities and some of the more peripheral ones?
True story. I have a shirt that the team at Blue Acorn made once I was a director and really had to start firing some people. they actually gave me a T-shirt with a picture of the two Bobs on it, but they'd superimposed my face on the Bobs.
So you don't only have one shirt with your face on it. I didn't. This is news to me. I didn't realize you have a whole line.
I suppose I have. Yeah, it's a whole line of exciting Ben Marks T-shirts. Yeah, no, it was funny, but then it's also not funny. If anyone that's done it will tell you even firing someone who doesn't belong at your company is from what I understand, it's like second to divorce and bereavement. So maybe third to divorce as like most stressful thing that can ever happen to you. It really, firing someone sucks. But yeah, so what do I do here? There's tech evangelism, right? The classic tech evangelism, and it's evolving. I mean, it's actually it feels new, but it's been around now for a while. I mean, it's essentially sort of an experienced marketing position, but when you have a product company and they have somewhat traditional marketing arm, how do you engage with people who are doing work for you on your behalf? How and when so much of your brand reputation is in the hands of the developers and agencies that are delivering Magento that last mile, right? We make the product that we make, and we try and make it as applicable as we can to as many markets and as many as many levels as we can. But at the end of the day, Magento doesn't end up installed. It doesn't end up as a solution for merchants without the work that people are doing. So we needed someone to kind of bridge that gap and be out there. And we needed that for a very long time. And there were a few people. I mean, the earliest days, you had like Kobe Oz, if you've been around since like 2008, 2009, was a name. Peter Kaminsky, Moses Akisian, Monocat on Twitter. I was glad to see him at Imagine this year. He's and you can find him at the LA Magento meetup. He kind of served this role a little bit, but I don't think he was really. I don't know that he was necessarily given the opportunity or the resources that he needed. And then I know Peter Kaminsky just did this in fits and starts, in addition to the 18,000 other things that he does, and has been doing at Magento for since the beginning. So Magento is a little bit different. The classic role of the evangelist is the easiest ones to explain are like Twilio. Twilio has a fantastic evangelist program. I think the latest one of the latest evangelists that I run into regularly at PHP events is Margaret Stapleton. Dead Lugosi, I think, is her handle on Twitter. Super.
You have a knack for remembering Twitter handles and names. It's quite impressive.
I was born into this. No, I get to discourse with these people a lot, but Twilio, so it's great because Twilio, they can sponsor a hackathon, right? The evangelists can show up. Now there's a lot more to what they do, especially even at Twilio, but they can show up at a hackathon. They can host a hackathon and say, okay, hey, we're gonna give you guys, here's a thing, here's your chance to integrate Twilio into your app, and of course then they have the fantastic API and sort of ease of use that you can do it very quickly. But that way you get people involved. And that's actually a really cool thing, because then it's very easy for their marketing department to measure effect, right? It's very hard for people to say, oh, well, Ben Marks was just in Romania and we noticed a 5% bump in people downloading Magento. I mean, that's not a practical measurement. And fortunately, I work for a company that doesn't try and measure me that way. I say me, but really it's a collective effort. Outside of just me, I'm well supported by the attitude and activity of a lot of people in this company, and no one more so than Sherry, who also is an evangelist for us as well. I mean, we say community manager, but that's just an insufficient title for an extraordinary person.
Yeah, we're gonna actually have her on a live stream here coming up pretty soon. I think next week. Don't have my calendar in front of me, but
is it going to take about a year to get through kind of the first tier of people?
Yeah, it should be about a year. Every single day of the week we'll get through that first tier, about a year and a half, and then we'll just keep going from there. But so you travel like crazy. And by the way, question from Guido here. He's asking Stroop waffles or Osewurst.
Also worst. Well, because stroopwafel are ubiquitous. You can even get them in the grocery stores here in the States now. Hell, even what is it? United serves them on flights, right? I'm going to go with Osewurst, which it traditionally is smoked, cold smoked raw ox sausage. It is a delicious treat that actually we were talking about bribery earlier. I never mind receiving mislabeling packages of meat around the world.
I knew we'd figure out some creative bribe ideas before this thing was done.
Hito's done this, and Zander has done this as well. Probably, smuggled me some Oswurst outside of the Nether Dutch.
Nice. And so, are you going to make it out to Meet Magento Netherlands? And
yeah, we're so yeah, I'm still figuring out about China coming up here, but going to be at Meet Magento Italy the 24th and 25th in Venice. Then actually going to take a couple days of PTO, or as my wife likes to call them, weekend.
So cute, the ability to take weekends.
Yeah, and we're going to go to try and go to Dubrovnik. We had an aborted try at that a couple years ago because she decided breaking her leg would be more fun. We'll go.
I remember that. That was a sad time.
sad moment. But that's actually it works out. It works out well. It kind of saves a couple of intercontinental flights. Then I'll just pop up to Meet Magento Netherlands, which is going to be great this year with TJ Gamble and Rebecca Brockton hosting. And then I've got some meetings and stuff in the U.S. and in Europe, so I'll be bouncing around. Then we'll actually hit JH or taking back the Meet Magento UK brand. That's going to be June 13th in London. Very excited about that. It's their organizational efforts so far that I've seen have been phenomenal. It's going to be an amazing event. My colleague from Strategy and Growth, Peter Sheldon, VP of Strategy, is going to be there speaking. And then on the 18th and 19th,
he's kind of a sharp cookie. That Sheldon.
I tell people, like, it's just if I see his number pop up on my phone, I just kind of woosah for a moment, and I kind of get my knuckles limber, and I'm just getting ready to type. I mean, I've
your brain ready, do some mental exercises.
I mean, I've been on the phone with him for 10 minutes and banged out like a 2,000 word, 18 slide PowerPoint deck that just took me deeper and faster into a topic than I'd ever been. Yeah. Working with Peter's a treat, but it's tough to keep up with him sometimes. So then and then on the 18th and 19th, we've got Meet Magento Germany. So you have the two, kind of the two foundational Meet Magento events, Netherlands and Germany, pretty close to each other. And then we're going to follow up on the, just recently found out on the, after Meet Magento Germany, we're going to do a little bit of a meeting about the Meet Magento Association in, the Magento Association in there, probably in Germany.
Nice. We had a comment from Adam Patterson. New GIF idea: Ben's hand position when he said two bobs, which I don't remember what that was, but I'm going to play it back.
And I'm sitting there doing it, and this is back to that editorial circuit that I'm sitting there. I'm like, should probably, especially when I'm saying two bobs. Like, there's a lot of things that could go wrong in that moment. So we're just gonna let that one fly its way away to the Internet Archive.
So you travel like crazy. I mean, obviously have a love for travel. Do you still love it? Is it grueling?
Yeah,
what's that like?
Couldn't do it if I didn't love it. There's a penalty for the pace. Anyone that's taken an intercontinental flight, especially when you're jumping time zones. I mean, even if you're going just across latitudes, that's a tough thing after 10 hours. But jumping 12, 15 time zones is there's a penalty to be paid. My cholesterol topped out over 300 at the end of the year last year. Working on that.
Amen, brother. Right there with you.
Yeah. Eat your omega-3s, cut out the carbs, fast every once in a while, and maybe cut out the alcohol. So it's manageable, you know. But it's really, I enjoy travel. I used to actually be pretty scared about being on planes. Go figure. But for me, it's not, you know, I get tired. I get tired. I get burned out, and then I'm not kidding. I get to an event and I meet people, and they are Magento is so important to them. They're excited to meet people from Magento, but they're certainly interested to talk about Magento. And it always, I mean, I can be dead tired walking into a venue, and then you'll see me light up. So it's really, I'd say I enjoy the people. I enjoy the ability to still be relevant and have an impact on something that I see impacting so many others. This business has been transformative to the lives and families and markets in so many places, that I still enjoy a position of being able to have, you know, not me personally have influence, but really just convey the influence that matters to others. That's the real key for me. So that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, that's awesome. We talked a little bit about like Jeffrey Way, Laracast, and some of the different evangelists you interact with, PHP groups, PHP events. How is that going as far as sort of evangelizing the broader PHP community? Obviously, a lot of the M2 stack is much more modern, and I'm sure they're liking that. How's that going overall, as far as increasing adoption in the broader community?
Yeah, it's another tough thing to measure. It's because it's such a varied and long tail game. But I still have people come up to me. It happened at Longhorn PHP in Austin just before Imagine, where someone came up and they just said, "Oh yeah, I saw you talk at some PHP event like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and really started looking in. We weren't sure about Magento at the time." But you made some points, and then I think we had like a follow-up conversation afterwards, and they went with Magento. And it's it's a powerful thing for me to hear. It's just my concern is always that merchants, that agencies are working with the right platforms for them, that merchants are getting on the right platform. And if Magento is not a fit, I don't want a merchant on the platform. Magento tends to be a fit, I think, for more businesses than not. So I'm really concerned to have Magento kind of top of mind in every e-commerce conversation. At the very least, I want it to be actively, sort of actively considered. And I am lucky that I don't have to sell Magento licenses, so I'm able to have very frank discussions. But it's interesting. I've been party to very frank discussions without realizing who I was talking with, and then some of these people end up being the largest brands, like the biggest logos that we have on our logo board. That's what I love about Magento as a platform and kind of our approach as a community is it's fairly pragmatic. It's pretty darn open. We certainly are, I think, all together strive to be, honest and earnest about this business.
That's awesome. And I think that's really what people are looking for is just when they're considering a platform, somebody who can just be honest with them, be straight with them. I mean, it's entirely possible you're the number one salesperson for Magento without being a salesperson or even realizing it, just by talking honestly, answering questions honestly and openly, not BSing.
At the very least, I try to not hurt the cause. You should ask Gary sometime if I'm the number one salesman. I'm pretty sure I'm. I did ask the question though at the beginning of last year, so I'm like, gosh, I hope I'm adding value. And I asked some of my some of the executive team, and they said yes, I add value. So
in my heart, you're the number one salesperson and will always be. I still remember, I think I mentioned this to you recently, but when I before I got into Magento, 2011, I was at this job I hated, decided to get into Magento heavy duty, and started watching your videos every night. when I got home from work and just diving in and learning. And and the rest is history. So like you said, Magento is transformed the lives and businesses of so many people in so many ways. It's a beautiful story, and you're a beautiful part of that story, sir.
Well, it's I tell you what, I get to play a part that would not exist without this wonderful community that we get to work with. It's been an amazing ride. I mean, if the next plane that I get on decides to sort of land at rapid speed into a mountain or something,
Hey, don't say that.
I will die a happy man. Hey, it's a reality. Anytime you get on a plane, but I've it has been wonderful. I look forward to it continuing to be wonderful, and look forward to having bigger and more strategic involvement with the community going forward. I will probably slow down the travel a little bit. It's certainly been my intent so far this year, but that doesn't really matter, because there's so many people out there that are willing to be present with the community and have a lot of these discussions in even more depth and nuance than I can.
Right. Well, are there with the discussion you're having with the broader PHP community, are there particular reservations that they're having? Any interesting stories around maybe a conversation with somebody you had that you were able to bring to the team and get things solved and prioritized?
It's been a tough transition. I mean, I myself as a Magento 1 developer we were siloed. If you were kind of passive about things, yes, I ended up very siloed, as did a lot of others, in terms of like all of a sudden, oh crap, now I've got to kind of learn
what's Composer?
Yeah, what's Composer? What do we do with these namespaces and all this stuff? And then on top of that, you're kind of sort of relearning Magento again, and then there's all this JavaScript dimension, and then we have all this build pipeline, all this stuff that you have to do that just wasn't there before. But it was interesting. I have there's a guy who's going to be speaking at I think Netherlands and Germany. Meet Magento there, Stefan Hochdorfer.
Oh yeah, he did a Nomad Mage. Yeah.
Very bit expert AG as his
bit expert,
and he is very sharp person. I've seen him a few times on the Magento circuit on the PHP speaking circuit. And in the early days, he's just like, yeah, Magento, not so, not really. It's just that he couldn't work with it because Magento 1, at the time, and this is getting into like 2013, 2014, it's just not built the way a modern PHP developer wanted to work. And he actually just came to me, I think it was maybe at Sunshine PHP a couple of years back. It was right after we'd released Magento 2, so probably Sunshine PHP from 2016. Great event, by the way, down in Miami. If you get a chance, I highly recommend it. Miami in January is better than other places in January. But he mentioned, he just said, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, my team's using Magento 2 now. Like, holy crap, that's great. That was actually my first indication that we kind of organically that we'd gotten things right. But the conversations that I hear now, I do less direct outreach to PHP events than I used to, because there's a lot more Magento stuff happening. But I think, we were never present for those conversations before. And then once I was there, I was able to really, tell our story, talk about the things that we were doing. And now I've got a whole bunch of people who, if they hear someone talking about Magento, they just, they get referred to me. So my outreach was pretty effective there. Moving forward, though, the conversations that I have with Magento developers, like I think the biggest thing for them is the issues that they're having understanding, customizing the system, customizing checkout, digging into this JavaScript architecture that we have, this knockout architecture that we have, and then our tooling in general, like our developer tooling. Because why is PHP successful to begin with? It's because you can type a little bit, hit save, refresh the web page, see the result. And Magento 2 kind of gets away from that, unfortunately. It just slows down that that rapid iteration, and then add some additional complexity there when you want to visualize, some basic interface changes like CSS. That's
Getting closer and closer to Java.
Right. So exactly. I mean, we've effectively reinvented compiling. Right. There's plenty of jokes about that on the internet. Not about us in particular, but just where PHP kind of gone. PHP and JavaScript have gone in general. But then you get to this actually is what makes me really excited for the work that James Zetlin, Andrew Levine, and that team are doing for PWA Studio. I mean, really, PWA Studio is a chance for us to make good on our commitment to be, to having a developer-friendly framework. And I know that's a major goal. If you've watched any of the presentations that anyone from that team have given, it's one of the big features that they mentioned. And the thing is, a good framework is going to necessarily be developer friendly, right? So, or I should say, an effective framework, effective for business solutions that are needed for the commerce domain, are going to be. You've got to have that good developer story, right? You've got to help developers do their job. Again, they're the ones ultimately that are resolving the delta between what Magento gives and what the merchant needs. So we've got to help them do their job, and that is my like heart bursting. I'm talking like aliens level heart, like chest bursting enthusiasm for what that team is doing. It's I don't want to say it's making Magento great again. I want to say that it's getting.
Because you would never say that.
Never say that. I'm saying it really gets Magento back to, well, I could say back to being enabling the developer workflow. But truth be told, what I have seen in the early demos from James and team, if they're building this the way that it seems like they're building this, and from what I've seen, like the workflows, it's going to turn heads even outside of the PHP world. In terms of this, the kind of heads up information that developers get while they're developing, like why is this here in the interface? Oh, I can very quickly find out, and then I can jump over here. I can make this tweak, even though I've got all this very modular system. And the problem with a truly well isolated modular system can be that it's hard to figure out exactly what's where. But I think we're giving the heads up tooling that developers need to then find where they need to make a change, make the change, and they can visualize that change in under 2 seconds. Like that is cool. And to see that being done seamlessly, considering the CSS, the JS, and the PHP that are all having to work together for this. Plus the kind of the mix between stuff that's getting rendered server side and stuff that's being visualized, or that's being delivered to a rendered client side. Like that's going to be really powerful. It's a very tall order, and it's like I always tell people when we're talking about something great that we're going to do. It's like, we're going to do this, but trust me that when I say that, but verify.
Right.
Check in on that and make sure we delivered on that promise. I mean, I'm still getting shit about the quarterly releases that I was told to talk about and then asked to not talk about.
Yeah, Ben, let's not talk about that so much. No, we're actually going to have Andrew Levine on Mage Talk next week. Nice. Max Bucknell this week talking GraphQL, which obviously has a close tie-in.
Yeah. The GraphQL is a story there for us as well.
Yeah. And then I was going to say, it's interesting. You talked about, the work James and Andrew and that team is doing. And I'm thinking about that conversation we had about hiring junior developers versus more senior. It seems there's been a little bit of a shift in Magento's hiring strategy. I believe the Ukrainian office was moved over. Some resources were shifted to have more people kind of in-house. And it seems like with hires like James and Andrews, maybe more, at least on the front end side of things, maybe more senior hires than we've seen in the past. Did you see a shift there in kind of hiring strategy?
There was a shift that happened. I didn't see it at first. I didn't appreciate it. Couple of Meet Magento Romania from a couple years ago. This new guy, a relatively new guy in the Magento world, showed up. Guy by the name of Jason Woosley. So he kind of reached out and said, "Hey, I just want to get in touch with the developer community." I said, "Well, by the time he was pinging me about this, I said, well, Meet Magento Romania is coming up, and that's actually a pretty interesting event." And I ended up actually on the phone. Jason has a lot of contacts and connections from companies he's been a part of in the past, and he I really didn't appreciate it at the time, but sorry, I ended up on a phone interviewing James Zetlin, who seemed kind of cool on the phone. I had no idea the nutball that he is. I mean that in total admiration and affection. Love me some Jay-Z. But that's been that. Jason Woosley has made a very big mark on this company, and we see it in all sorts of ways. I think from getting the Magento, making the decision to move the Magento office to the sort of core engineering office to Austin, right? And being that exposes us to, it opens up some new doors as far as the kinds of hires that we can make. Also, community engineering. I mean, the value of this program is I think is hopefully apparent to everyone that's bothering to pay attention to this live stream or the recording. Yes. So I've noticed a very big difference in who we're hiring, what we're able to do. I mean, the difference is, especially, so those two things in combination with the work that's getting done with community engineering. I mean, we're looking at over 50% of the code going into the Magento core this year is coming from the community, right? That's good. It's
incredible.
It is. I mean, it's not. I've had a couple people ask me rhetorically, like, is that not exploitative? And it could be, but a lot of this stuff is not going to get built without the community's help. I mean, how long have we been waiting for multi-source inventory? Literally forever. The code was stubbed out in the very early days, and I pointed that out to me a long time ago. And it's just that feature that could never get the right level of prioritization to get done. It's going to be delivered, and and then along with all the other stuff that the community's working on, at the end of the day, these people they're going to solve these bugs, these problems anyway, and put them into their own builds. Why not have that work get put into our core and benefit everyone? And that's one of the things that I'd like to see. But because of that means that our core engineering can actually do more pure R&D. We can actually push forward on the boundaries of what a product company, especially a product company in this space, can do. And that's good, because as our competitors start nipping at our heels with the features that they're pushing out and are able to become better, hopefully for them, better competitors, better product companies, we've got to keep staying ahead of them. I mean, I'm not generally a very competitive guy, but I do believe that or a competitive person, but I do believe that the healthy competition among the different platforms, ultimately just benefits merchants and the consumers.
Yeah. By the way, we got TJ in the chat trolling us. He said, "Geez, I left the beach for this," and making fun of the Make Magento Great Again. Joel Hart says,
TJ, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't go to the beach because I had to do this. It's literally right there.
You mentioned, and by the way, if you got to jump off, I know we're a little bit over time. Just let me know. Give me the signal.
Going on in my life. We can do this. Let me just tell my boss I won't be at any of those 3 meetings. I'm good.
Okay. I'm getting a tiny bit of feedback. I don't know if you still have your headset on, but what was I going to say was, you mentioned that like you might want to have a more strategic. I can't remember how you worded it. Have a role that's more strategic, maybe a little bit less traveling. How do you see your role sort of evolving and changing over time?
Well, I probably didn't sufficiently answer the question you asked about evangelism.
really the evangelist's job is to go out and turn the people that he or she meets at events into other evangelists. And I have to look at where is my value. For many years, my value has been to be out there and just be present, right? Because we had been absent in so many places. But eventually you do have to start to look and say, okay, well, as I've learned more and as I've made different connections, where's the best? How do I spend my time the best? I mean, Kalen, as a successful, like, habitual, borderline neurotic entrepreneur, what that basically the 10 minutes that you're spending on X is 10 minutes that you're not doing Y. You start to look at the opportunity cost, everything. I'm lucky that I work for, I work directly for our executive in charge of strategy and growth, and Mark Leonard. And talk about someone, he and Peter are quite the team. And Mark is really good at getting me to look at these kind of strategic things, and to ask these kind of questions that I wasn't necessarily asking. I mean, I could probably stay in this role until whenever, but at some point I'm not going to want to travel 300 days a year, and at some point I'm going to want to grow my career in some new and challenging directions. So I've been having some really great conversations with folks that I know from the community, having some great conversations internally, and trying to figure out what that looks like. So I'm working on some things right now, particular looking at markets where our product could use some help, being more applicable. Helping out a lot of there's a lot of I'm fairly involved with the Magento Association that we announced at Imagine. So these are things where I may be less directly present, but I'm able to allow the community to become more present and better connected, and grow. And that's still evangelism, whether you get on a plane and show up there or not.
Right. How do you like, what do you think about, there's lots of, live streaming and things like that we're doing. There's like, how do you feel about, because there's an in-person dynamic, like we've talked about, you're tired, you walk into that room, you become energized. And there's an in-person dynamic, but then you can scale things so much better through whether it's online on-demand trainings or streaming or whatever. Like, how do you see that balance? Like, what's the most effective way to leverage those two different dynamics?
Well, it's yeah. You would think, if you've seen the movie, was it Up in the Air, George Clooney, I'm sure my wife would love it if I were more George Clooney like.
You kind of have a very distinct George Clooney vibe, though. I'm not gonna lie.
That's good. That's good. I wish I had that salt and pepper and that olive skin, but well, this is not the George Clooney hour. This is the Ben and Kalen hour. So, no, but his character is this. He's got to show up and fire people. That's his professional job, but he's closing in on like 10 million miles air travel, and it's his thing. It's his domain. He walks into the airport and he knows what's going on. And then this little whippersnapper consultant, brand new like business grad, comes in and she's like, hey, we can do this all remote. And I think when I saw that movie, I thought about this job that I'm doing, and yeah, I mean, when a remote meeting can suffice, especially if you got to jump across lots of time zones, it's a lot easier on everybody. But a lot of this business, and that's certainly true. There's a lot of internal meetings that happen, right, where we're not flying out to see each other. But Kalen, I am never unimpressed by how important it is to be there and be present with the people in your market. So, this is the merchants, this is the agencies, this is the developers, the tech vendors actually showing up. There are conversations that will not happen. Even in well-developed markets, there are conversations that won't happen. There are, there's just all this long tail kind of stuff that just you won't even know you're missing it because you weren't there. You weren't there to kind of set the ball in motion. And now of course you have to look at the opposite of that and say, well, what opportunities am I missing because I was on a plane for 10 hours in both directions, and operating at 80% efficiency for a day or two, and then having to get home and catch up on all the stuff I wasn't doing at home. I mean, these are the questions that you have to ask yourself. But for the time being, there has been and continues to remain a lot of value in us being present with our community and us showing up. More and more, that needs to be more than, and it has been more than just me. I mean, we've been sending people out much more than we ever have in the past, and that's been a benefit to everyone, us included. And I want to make sure that we're strategically working towards that as well. Like that part of the activities that Sherry and I are doing are setting it up so that other people can do this stuff.
Yeah. By the way, shout out to Navarre Barnier in the room, and Richard Bike said, "Lol, George Clooney, things got weird for a second."
Things got weird for a second.
I wouldn't mind getting weird with George Clooney
Things just got really weird for a second. we should have him on. Actually, no, we should have them all on. I'm much more interested to meet the smart one in that family.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny though, because everybody, I don't go to a lot of conferences. I go to Imagine is the main one, and everybody, whenever they come, it's always like, man, can we do this somehow? Do this more often? Like there's this energy that we all get from being together. And I think I was thinking about, I think that's half the reason why I'm doing these streams, because even though it's in a very imperfect medium, it's sort of a tiny bit of a way to have like a conversation that I wouldn't otherwise have. And I just enjoy those conversations. People always ask me about the sessions, and I honestly don't make it as many as I'd like, but I just love the conversations, with.
Well, and actually you've hit on something. I mean, this was what Cal Evans, kind of the great uncle of the PHP community, is working over at Nexus now. But Cal, wonderful person, slightly less wonderful than his wife. But Cal, his whole goal in starting the Nomad PHP and then Nomad Mage, that Nomad imprint was that some people can't make it out to events, whether it's their economy, their personal situation, their location. And he wanted it to be that here's that experience where you guys can kind of come together. And then there's the day camp for developers that also happens. I think that's also one of his imprints, where you literally have this conference that happens online, and he tries to set that up as this sort of remote collaborative experience. But yeah, you're right. There is a ton of magic when Magento community gets together. Now it's amazing. Las Vegas definitely injects a little bit of energy, and the Wynn is this, amazing facility. And our events team is among the best in the business. They really, our events team and all the people, Vespuy and her team that kind of put the mental map of the whole thing together. It all comes together to build this perfect storm of energy and ideas and enthusiasm. And I don't think I experience anything quite at the level of Imagine anywhere else I go, at any of the other conferences, but you do get that. I know I get that conference bump when I'm leaving conferences, and I'm just like, oh man, that bump, that's over. Yeah, so it's real and it's out there, and so I think these online interactive things are really cool as well.
No, it's funny because I, to be honest, leading up to Imagine, got some people drag racing outside there. Leading up to Imagine, I was actually, for some reason, I was in kind of a weird mood. I wasn't super pumped about it. I was, I don't know. And then it was amazing. It was absolutely perfect. Like I just had such a great time. I was so energized. And it's kind of like what you said of being tired from travel and just getting energized when you hit. But it wasn't tired from travel. I was just, online. Actually, I was going to ask you about this because you tweeted recently. You said something to the effect of, if there's anybody I've pissed off, I'm sorry. And it's funny because you're such a, like you said before, you're not very competitive. You're such a genuinely not, I randomly sat next to somebody that used to work with you and talked about how you spent your own time on nights helping them pass a certification test. And anyways,
Dedrick, yeah.
But that was a really random thing I sat next to and just really touching story. But I completely lost my train of thought with that question.
You're talking about it was kind of a little bit of it was a little cryptic tweet. I was just, it was a rough moment. I was, every once in a while, especially at the end of a trip to Asia and stuff, I was kind of mulling over some things and I'm like, man, it was kind of that, I was worried that I'm not hearing the bad stuff. And I hoped if I've ever bothered anyone that, they might see that and say, oh, okay, well, well, we can move on, or it might encourage someone to reach out who might not otherwise reach out. Cause I don't I don't do well with conflict, and try and avoid it actually, but, a little conflict can be good. And in fact, a little conflict's necessary to grow. So
yeah,
hopefully that was, I was just having those moments, and maybe I just watched, Notting Hill or something on the plane and was just feeling a little emotional.
Sometimes my most emotional moments are like on a plane where you're just exhausted and you watch this movie. You're just crying next to some random stranger on a plane.
Yep.
No, yeah, and I think that interactions online, I feel that way sometimes too. Like you'll put out a tweet and maybe it feels like it landed funny or whatever, and then you think someone's upset with you, and literally somebody I thought was upset with me, I ran into it. Imagine they're like, no, everything's cool, and it's so important to connect online and things like that. There's and I'm curious with you. There's a lot of discussion around mental health these days. Like how do you, what are your thoughts on that in the developer community? A ton of developers from different spaces. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I got to meet Ed Finkler, Funkatron on Twitter. He's one of the most truly inspiring and incredible people that I've met in this world. I met him at the very first conference I was speaking, PHP Tech, several years ago before I joined Magento, and he was doing this thing, and it was this idea of hacking the stigma. Basically, the central idea was like, well, if someone walks into the job and they got their arm in a cast, and especially if they're a programmer, it's like, they got a broken wing, and it's no big deal. There's no stigma there. It's like, oh, that sucks. You're probably gonna be typing kind of slow. Yeah, whatever. Well, someone walks in with crippling depression, anxiety, then yeah, that's tough. And in this room, I mean, by the end of his presentation, we were all there were not all of us, but most of us were crying. I was one of them. I mean, Ed's story is his story. There were some parallels. I mean, I was kind of reverse bust. I got bused into the inner city from the farm. And there were some kids with some rough life, and they only know violence, and they used to beat the shit out of me. That was middle school. That didn't do much for my already anxiety-prone self. So I had I had daily panic attacks in my 20s, and they still come up every once in a while. I'm lucky though. I'm very fortunate that it's kind of more or less resolved itself. I can't explain that, and I certainly wouldn't expect it to happen for anyone else. But I can at least empathize a little, and so I've spoken about that I've spoken about that actually at a PHP conference for what was becoming at the time open sourcing mental illness. It's a very real thing. Developers and people in offices, you see these incidents where people kind of they rage quit, or they just have these outbursts, and that's just a sign that there's been a failure along the way for people to feel like they could reach out. So it's all about creating a more open environment where people can say, I'm having a problem. They can find that help, because at the end of the day, I mean, at best, you're improving things with the business. I'm sorry, at least you're improving things with your business, right? You're probably, hopefully, able to help someone, live their life and grow, and you very well may be saving a life. I know, Ed, I remember, mentioning someone who'd taken their life, and it's when you look at when you see someone about to jump off of a bridge, like, you're going to stop and you're going to talk to that person. You're going to stop. You're going to try and save that person's life, right? Why not start way before then?
Right. When they're sitting at their cubicle and they're not about to jump off a bridge, but it's not always visible. And
I mean, I would, step back from the ledge. Like, have that conversation earlier, and let's create an environment to do that. I mean, so Osme, they're on Twitter. Rebecca Brockton just did a massive fundraiser for them. It's a wonderful organization. They have all kinds of resources. If you are at an agency, if you're running an agency, if you're at a merchant, or if you're responsible for a team at a merchant, you can get their materials and learn a lot about how to set up a workspace where you might be able to make some of these differences. And that's an amazing thing. And from someone who's felt who's gone through just a tiny little bit of what so many people experience chronically, day in, day out. Having just a little space to breathe can be the difference between lasting at a job or not, or lasting in life or not.
Right. Yeah. So I've been using Reddit a little bit more recently, and I've subscribed to some different subs. I subscribe to /r/jobs, and I was, initially just like, oh, I can, with Commerce Hero, obviously we do hiring and stuff. So I'm like, well, I can, find some ways to promote, my cause. And so I'm subscribed, and I'm seeing these posts, and half of them honestly are like heartbreaking. Like, it's somebody that has depression, anxiety, OCD, don't have a job, haven't had a job for months, and don't know how to, get a job. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, the space that I'm dealing in, like you touched on this, we're dealing with very senior, very productive, very specialized developers that are paid very well. And I'm thinking, and sometimes it's a struggle to get jobs for them, depending on different factors, location, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, there is absolutely nothing I can do for this person who doesn't have a ton of, well, they're not even in my industry to start with, but whatever industry they're shooting for, probably don't have a ton of skills, lacking motivation. Some of that is physical or chemical, and just everything else layered on top. And it's honestly, it's like I got into this to try and do some marketing and some content, but it's breaking my heart, and it's making me want to learn more. I should probably try to do a thing with Ed, and it's making me want to learn more about this. How can people like that are in that position, what can they do to advance their careers and you get a good job, when by definition they're lacking motivation, which is the one thing that as an employer you're looking for. You're looking for highly motivated people.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, you were dealing with these, we're dealing with these people who are probably pretty successful already, for a reason. And whatever, even not, which is not to say that they don't, they're not suffering their own demons, but we are, there is, as I've said a couple times, there's kind of a filter being applied there. And for me, yeah, I don't know how, I don't know how to solve this problem, as a people. And it for some strange reason, maybe just where our society is right now, especially the US, where the US is right now, it can feel downright toxic. It can feel very hard to connect with your fellow human being. And it's I don't know, maybe it comes back down to, in my mind, it comes down to just taking the time to make a pause when someone is, when someone's being an ass at work, when they're being, everything's getting to them, and they're having, it seems like they're just having their worst day ever every day. You can get offended by that. You can be upset that's kind of screwing up your ability to get work done. You can also maybe try to reach out, or, at least talk with the company and say, hey, something's going on. Especially if this is a new behavior for this person. And just say, hey, something's going on. It's tough to not take the stuff personally. But yeah, you can absolutely reach out. I mean, probably the worst thing that's going to happen is this person is just going to, push you away for trying to reach out, because they don't feel comfortable responding, or they don't know how to respond. At least there was an attempt, right? And maybe if enough people do that, maybe the person starts to feel okay to say something.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Wrapping this up, getting ready to land this plane here.
Butter the bread.
Any any feedback you're interested? Obviously, you probably get more feedback than you can handle, but any questions you have for the Magento community? Where do you think people should be focusing right now?
Why do you have so many events, people? My God, I need to sleep. I'm kidding. No, please keep having events.
Actually, it's funny because there was a Twitter thing that went off for people talking about, there's too much live streaming and da-da-da. And I thought to myself, with any medium, whether it's blog posts, events, streaming, whatever, it eventually just becomes saturated to a certain extent. Now you look at events, they probably didn't used to, there probably was a time where you could go to basically every Magento event, even if you're not Ben Marks. But that time is long past, so it's
I'd say, right now it's one of the things I'm looking at. So getting to my strategy or strategic perspective, I think there are too many events a little too close, especially a little too close together. You've got in Europe, let's take Europe, for example. you've got the Meet Magentos, you've got Mage Titans, you've got Mage Unconferences, you have hackathons. You can literally spend all of the, I think Europeans get 11 months of vacation time. I think that's how socialism works.
I think 10 and a half, something like that.
And they can spend all of that time, and some of them do, going to Magento hackathons and stuff. So I have a goal to make sure to, especially with the Magento Association, to make sure that hopefully we'll be able to coordinate these things better, because the problem that you run into when you have this saturation of events is ultimately all the events suffer, right? Because you get people have to choose, and sometimes having to choose one event or the other, that's life. But with a constant barrage of events, you end up with, it tightens things up for sponsorships. It tightens things up for Magento to come out and send people and have people be present. So there's a lot of things that really, it ends up becoming a detractor for everybody. And so a little coordination goes a long way. So I'll be working towards that end as one of the many goals of the, I'm not, the Magento Association is an external thing to Magento. I'm going to be working with the Magento Association to try and make sure that there's some coordination there, just for the benefit of everyone. And then there are broader strategic things that we can do. Because I remember when this thread popped up, because I know he wants to consume all the things, right? But yeah, at some point you will absolutely burn out if you're trying to keep up. I know I'd mentioned recently, I don't keep up with Mage Talk. I will grab the podcasts. If I'm getting on a flight, I'll load up a couple and and go back over them, but I'm usually several weeks out of date. And the reality there is that, yeah, there's just not enough time. But I think there's also, we could do, probably do a better job of curating and just saying like, hey, here's all these things. Like, here are the topics that were discussed. I don't know what people decide to do this. I don't know how that's collected. It's an interesting idea. It could be, a tab under Commerce Hero. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's, some people might say, hey, everybody stop doing so much stuff. But I see there's, like you just said, it's more of an opportunity for somebody to go. If somebody went in and did a really good job of curating and summarizing, I mean, Sherry does that on
that's
Magento Mondays.
Yeah, that's the best. I think that's the best digest that we have so far. And the great thing is it's archival.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the opportunity. Well, Benjamin H. Marks, thank you so much. It was really fun to have this conversation. I'm sure everybody at home thoroughly enjoyed it.
And they're all going to take naps now. They're done. This was so much Magento. It was too much.
Hey, if you put in the time to watch this whole thing, I think your Magentoing for the day is done. You deserve a break. Go get a pina colada.
Go get a tea or a pina colada or pizza or whatever you want.
Something. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll be doing this tomorrow. I can't remember who it is tomorrow because my brain is fried. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Wow.